Surprisingly, for the longest time I played Minecraft, I was not a builder. Didn't even know it was a thing. May I present my old base. Today I will take this and build it how I would build it 8 years later. To be honest, since this is not completely finished, I will make some very free choices. Well, let me show you this masterpiece. It is a wooden box, doesn't have any depth, texture or whatever and looks very 2010. But it has horses and a pig. Oh boy, but I think I can do this. And there was no moss, calcite or mud bricks. I feel like I should try to use them as these are my favorites. But let me show you my plan first. I will try to keep the color palette mainly the same, but I will add some more to it. A lot more. The pumpkin will of course also stay, as well as windows, fences and the box shape, although a lot bigger and with more little ones next to it. So let's start with the outline. I want the hole to be rather long but not too wide so that it doesn't get too big. Then I cut it into sections. These will be the base of the arches. The middle arch will be a bit bigger than the other two, but they are rather simple. Then I fill in the shape with stone just for now. On top I outline the two buildings, or is it one? At least they are connected. The bottom will stay oak wood as I want to have at least some of that, but the top part will be calcite. The top part will be slightly bigger so that it is overhanging a bit to add depth and also more interest to the build. The roof will be a simple gable roof, so I'll build up the gables first and then fill them in. It slopes upwards to the top and is again overhanging a bit. For now it's deep slate, but I plan on making a gradient going from dark to light grey. Then my building process is as usual a bit chaotic. I jump from doing this to doing that, but at least I stayed on this side first. So I wanted to add another bit on the side and estimated it to be roughly 1/3 of the bigger building. Usually the rule of thirds looks very nice. This one has a simple shed roof. On the other side will be a slightly crooked chimney going all the way up from the bottom. The small building gets a little dormer window to add some more to the roof, and then I punch out the first windows. I fill most of them with glass blocks 1 block behind, and that won't be a problem inside as there will be a second wall. But from the outside the glass blocks are creating these light squares. The mossy edge of the work is supposed to stand out a bit, and later I will work more on this area. I guess a feeling of the moss spilling over. The big balcony on the side will get a fence around it so nothing falls down or escapes. It'll be a pig and chicken coop. Then the windows in the darker areas will be a bit different than the others. One will be simple with fences and one with scaffolding. But both of them will have some oxidized copper next to them to add a bit of color. All in all, the color palette is rather neutral with the grey, white and brown. Here I am struggling a bit with finding a way to fill this wall in an interesting way, but eventually after trying out some options, I settle with 2 simple arched windows. I like to take parts of the wall and color them differently. This is breaking up the surface and makes the build a lot more interesting. Plus it's not very hard to do. Here I built another small roof using also extinguished campfires. Under there some chests and barrels can be stored. The campfires have a really nice texture. Then I decide it is time to add the texture to the building. Not sure why exactly now and not earlier, but whatever. Did I mention I jump around a lot while building? For the orc I create a gradient using mud bricks, packed mud and brown mushroom blocks. The calcite gets as usual some diorite, but also some andesite for the shadows. The roof has not many details, so the texture is most important in that part. Being able to replace the blocks so easily feels a bit like painting. I definitely want some moss on the roof, and farthest away I start with the black stone. From there I use lighter and lighter blocks, well at least somewhat lighter. All of this is rather dark. Then next to the moss I use glazed grey terracotta and some diamond ore for a tint of blue. Going one more time over everything and unsmooth the gradient and the big roof is finished. Just some grass and flowers on the moss, and because in creative I could also place some on the stone, but ultimately I decided against that so that it would stay true to survival. Though I'm not playing in survival, I fear if so, this would never be finished too. The smaller ones will have the same gradient, but without the moss. The rocky part at the bottom is a bit flat right now, so I decided to make the bottom a bit thicker so that everything looks more natural. The far right side is supposed to be built with bricks, so I'm using them there. There will be the entrance too. Then of course, to make the moss spill over the edge again, I have to add more blocks, and this is also giving more space next to the house. For the texture I wanted to do another gradient, but differently than usual. I wanted it to be light at the bottom and dark at the top under the moss. I also tried to emulate shadows like this, like here under the arches. All in all, I like a darker hue a lot better. On top I can't forget to add the pumpkin, so add one carved one and some more uncarved ones. In a way they also add some color to the build. While the way up is not very safe, it blends in nicely with the rest. Some simple stairs will do, and again I am using the brick variants to make it look built with purpose. The door is nothing special, just another 2x6 one, which is a bit bigger than a singular one. Nowadays I like to upscale my builds slightly to be able to add more details. Next to it another window will do, and I separate the first and second floor further using dark oak stairs. Then you can see me figure out a design that works, and eventually I settle with a dark oak part on the left, another small very unsafe balcony and more windows. For the back I felt rather lazy, so I started with adding the texture everywhere before setting on the details. I don't think I have to explain every detail again, so anyway, there are just more windows, and I left the bottom as is because I decided to just add some greenery later. Speaking of which, it is about time to build the tree. It has to be somewhat leading away from the house, so I built up the bigger branches first. Then spam oak leaves on them and fill in the empty areas with smaller branches using fences. More leaves onto that, and eventually the tree looks like a tree. The roots are hanging down the wall, which I think looks pretty neat. Then I add more greenery to the empty wall until it is no longer empty. Some on the other side, some mixed in with the moss, and some bushes down below. 2 of the arches will serve as stables for horses, so I put a fence around it and spawn some in. Then there's one arch left, and I feel like naturally it would attract at least a small sized chest monster. Some more details of camera, and I think I can call this finished. I'm sure 8 years ago I would have never imagined building something like this because, well, I didn't even think about it. A box just had to be big enough for all the chests and pets. And to be honest, my first base probably looked like this. Well, I hope you enjoyed this slightly different content, and until the next time, goodbye!